When you transition a Broadway musical to the silver screen, you walk a very, very fine line between musically heightened and overly exaggerated fanfare to empathetic cinematic realism. And this is not an easy feat by any stretch of the imagination, because there are specific elements that, in my opinion, only work on Broadway that certainly do not work in a movie theater. For example, when conveying emotion on a stage where you need your reactions and mannerisms to resonate and connect with someone over 200 feet away in the back row, it's perfectly acceptable and necessary to project and exaggerate your performance to reach that person in the very back row. But that is not the case with film, because in a movie, we, as the audience, in a way, are smack dab in the front row, like we're right there up close in the actor's face, being able to see everything up close. So what could be called exaggerated stage acting could now be categorized as overacting and too over the top for a movie. And as for the Prom, I'm sad to say that they didn't master the tightrope act of bringing the Broadway musical to the silver screen in the way it needed to be translated. And I'm really disappointed to start off my review on a negative like that, because I really wanted to love this film. And the best part, hands down about it, is the soundtrack. This album is a bop by any definition, and just about every single musical sequence had me enthralled and enjoying the hell out of it. From the choreography to the set design to the music itself to even the acting involved in the musical numbers. This was where the script and directing soared and excelled, and it's no shock that Ryan Murphy excelled in his direction of the musical numbers given his history as the creator of Glee, and it shows. They pulled out all the stops and gave me an enthralling array of musical moments that I can't wait to listen to over and over again. And I downloaded the soundtrack immediately as the movie finished. There was magic, life, and pizzazz in every single number that tickled my little Broadway itch the best way. And these musical numbers were ultimately the only saving grace for me that allowed me to enjoy at least a portion of this film. As for the all-star cast, I don't want to rake on anyone, because it's certainly not their fault, in my opinion, that there were issues with the movie and specific characters, because I firmly believe that with a better script and better direction, everyone would have delivered amazing performances. That being said, Meryl Streep is hands down the MVP of the movie, but that's not a shock to any of us. But the reason for that is because even when given cheesy-ass dialogue, as she is given a few times in this movie, Meryl Streep has the unprecedented ability to make it work and not feel dumb. And she does that with every single line to where she doesn't flounder any opportunity, and it's a joy to watch in just about every damn scene that she's in. And I would go as far as to say the same about Nicole Kidman. She also has a way of making bad dialogue work for her and her character, but unlike Meryl, who is given a much bigger, juicier role, I'd argue as more of a lead, Nicole Kidman is definitely a supporting role and isn't given enough to play with. James Corden has a more sizable role, and he has some of the funniest lines in the entire movie that really legitimately had me laughing out loud, but he also has some of the worst moments of, and best examples of, overacting that took me out of the film half the time. And as for Andrew Rannells, he's perfectly fine and has some really fun song numbers, but I'd argue he's even more sidelined than Nicole Kidman's character, and he's given hardly anything and not nearly enough to work with. The rest of the cast, like Keegan-Michael Key, Kerry Washington, and Jo Ellen Pellman, were fine in their roles, but they suffered the most from the flaws in the script. But considering that this is Jo Ellen Pellman's biggest breakout role she's ever had as an actress, it did make me want to see more of her and see her talent in a film that actually gave her much better material to showcase that talent. So let's transition into where I had issues with this movie, and the biggest offenses in my eyes were hands down the script and the dialogue our characters have to work with, and the other thing is how much this film feels like it's both spoon-feeding and force-feeding emotion and sentimentality down my throat in ways that don't feel earned nor organic. When it comes to the script, This film is filled with cliche after cliche and sadly only gets worse. The amount of overacting and exaggerated emotions felt inferior to the story itself. It was a case where what works on stage needs to be dialed down for the screen and not force-fed to us. There could have been some real genuine and heart-tugging scenes if the dialogue was written with more depth and less campiness. This film has a PG-13 rating, which makes zero sense to me because the script felt so watered down for a young audience. And I'd argue there were scenes that were Disney Channel bad. They have Oscar caliber actors, for God's sake, and they don't need to overact to get a reaction out of us. In fact, this amount of overacting in this movie, mixed with cheesy dialogue, only disengaged me that much more from several characters because I couldn't take them seriously. And as for the forced sentimentality, I am all for a heartfelt message of inclusivity, love is love, and acceptance. I'm an out and proud gay man, part of the LGBTQ community, for crying out loud, and I would love to see a movie musical about a lesbian high school couple who just want to go to prom and be accepted for it. But they took the tropes and tired cliches found in so many LGBTQ movies and spoon-fed them to me. It's almost like this movie was designed for an ignorant audience of kids, of straight kids who have no real understanding of the LGBTQ community. I know that sounds kind of strong, but that's kind of how it came off. And for that, Ryan Murphy, as a director who is also an openly gay man, he should have known better than to have done that. He's had much stronger, cleverer, grounded, and sharp scripts for shows and movies time and time again without needing to water them down and settle for such ABC Family High School Musical levels of sentimentality. This was literally a roller coaster ride for me because for about 80% of the film scenes that weren't musical numbers, it spiraled down in quality and then it raced back up in high gear for every musical moment. And with every musical moment that blew me away and left me with the hope that the movie found its footing and was going to improve in its dialogue, but to only continue this up and down battle, it became a very frustrating experience because this movie at its core has so much potential to be grand in every way and be one of the best LGBTQ films ever made, in my opinion. But I'm sad for the amount of times it settled for significantly less than it needed to. But there is no denying how wonderful and cinematic the music and spectacle in those numbers truly are. From a script standpoint, in terms of acting, character plot beats, and development, I'd give this film a C-. But for its musical moments, which is half the film, which includes the acting in those musical moments and those character building moments while in song, those musical numbers, I would have given an A. So with that in mind, I'm going to meet halfway, and I'm going to give The Prom a B-. And that was my review of The Prom, which just premiered on Netflix. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts and what you thought of the film. Feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, thank you all again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Ryan Bamey, signing off. Bye, everyone.